Recording. Okay. Erev Tov, everyone. Erev Yom Kippur. So, just two introductory thoughts before I get to the topic of tonight's shiur. You know, one of Rabbi Wein's quips always used to be that the rabbi always has something to say before he speaks. So, but just two thoughts. One is, we spoke this morning about Yom Kippur, obviously, and fasting, etc. Somebody asked me, am I going to be issuing written hanchayot, written guidance about Yom Kippur, who should fast and who should not fast? And my answer was no. I'm not going to be issuing such written guidance. It's funny, you know, a number of years ago, I spoke to a rabbinic colleague, and I asked him, does he give out written guidance before, we were talking about Pesach, but before certain Chagim? And he said, you know, I used to do that. But I used to write down the guidelines, and then everybody used to come and ask me the same questions that were written in the guidelines anyway. So I stopped. But more than that, when it comes to Yom Kippur, again, it's a very personal, it's a very individual question. You know, the question of somebody is ill, should I or should I not fast on? Am I allowed to fast on Yom Kippur or not? Depends on so many factors, and you really need to speak to the rabbi, and you need to speak to the doctor, you know, and then come to the rabbi with the information. So again, if anybody has particular questions, please come to me. Don't wait until the fast begins or just before, but right today, tomorrow, etc. if there are particular questions relating to fasting on Yom Kippur. Second thing, I just wanted to say something I've been thinking about, you know, and again, I'm going to say something, and I'm going to risk sounding political here, but I'm not going to sound political. And if you think that I'm talking about politics, you're misunderstanding me. So what I want to say is this, you know, we're now in the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We know on Rosh Hashanah, everything has been written. Everything has been inscribed, and it's on Yom Kippur, it's going to be sealed. And Chazal tell us we need to view ourselves, we need to view the world at this time of year as if the fate of the world is hanging in the balance, because literally the fate of the world is hanging in the balance. So I was thinking to myself, you know, sometimes heaven gives us images, gives us an opportunity to really connect, to really understand what we're going through. It doesn't take much imagination. Everybody's talking about Torah. But if you're not, if you've been watching the news, so everybody's saying that I'm told that there's an important meeting that's taking place tonight between the president of one country and the prime minister of another country. Okay, again, like I say, I'm not talking politics. It's not my purpose here, and I'm not getting into whatever people think. But you know, there are letters being written this way and petitions being written that way, and everybody, you know, there's so much hanging in the balance based on this meeting, and we know what's going to happen. Of course, we have to do our Shtadlut in the world, etc. But what's happening at this meeting, what's really going to determine is not what gets said at the meeting between those two leaders, but it's really what HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides, how he's going to seal and how he's going to inscribe those books. And it's dependent on our tefillot and our actions and our mitzvot, and the tefillot that we say right now, and the tehillim that we say right now, and the tefillim, the tefillot that we say on Yom Kippur can have an impact beyond what we can realize, beyond what we can know. But we don't have to imagine, to think, you know, there is so much that is hanging in the balance. We all know it, we all see it. The headlines are screaming it all out. Maybe there's a message there. Maybe heaven is trying to tell us, you know, just to understand the weight of these days and the importance of what's going on, the importance of our actions. Okay, that's the introduction. So I want to talk about a topic which we spoke about a little bit in the shiur today. I'm not going to repeat what I said this morning, talk about some other aspects as well, but it's such an important topic that I think it bears some repetition. And many of you were not at the shiur this morning. Where were you? But we will talk about the question of Hilchot Bein Adam Lechavero coming up to Yom Kippur, Erev Yom Kippur and Yom Kippur. We know that we're taught that Yom Kippur does not grant atonement for Averot Bein Adam Lechavero, between man and man, until you have gone and you have appeased and you have gained forgiveness from those individuals whom one has wronged. So let's go through some of the halachot of how this works in the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch Siman Taf Reish Vav. The title of the Siman is, you know, the Shulchan Aruch works chronologically. So when you're talking about Hilchot Yom Kippur, it starts off on the halachot of Erev Yom Kippur, then it gets onto through to the evening, the morning, etc. So still dealing with Erev Yom Kippur, but it's Sheyifayes Adam Chavero be'Erev Yom Kippurim. Then one needs to go and appease, one needs to go and get forgiveness, from one's friend whom one has wronged on Erev Yom Kippur. So says the Shulchan Aruch, Averot she'ben adam l'chavero ein Yom Kippurim machaper ad she'efaisenu. Yom Kippur will not wipe away those sins, those transgressions between people until you have gone and gained forgiveness from the other individual. Even if all that you've done is insulted somebody with words, meaning if you have gone and stolen from somebody, you've damaged their property, you owe them a monetary debt which you've incurred, so you have to return whatever you've stolen, you have to pay back whatever damage you've caused, and on top of that, you have to gain their forgiveness, right? It's not that once you return or once you give back what you've taken, that it's automatically forgiven. That's the precondition. But then you have to go and ask them for forgiveness as well. Same thing, says Shulchan Aruch, afilu bidvarim. Right? We say afilu, but it's a big deal. We know, when we were kids, they always taught us sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never harm me. That is one of the most incorrect and damaging sentences there is. It's absolutely it's not true. Words can be very, very damaging. Words can be very, very harming. Chaim v'mavet b'yad ha'lashon, and therefore, one has insulted somebody else with words. One needs to go and grant and ask for forgiveness for that. V'im eino mitpayesh b'rishona, yachzor v'yalech pa'am shniya v'shlishit u'b'chol pa'am yikach imo shlosha anashim. If you go and you ask forgiveness and the person says no, so you have to go again, and you have to go again, and not right at the same time on 3 different occasions, and you have to take 3 people with you. If after 3 times the person is still not appeased, so at that point it goes over to him. If you've on 3 different occasions in front of 3 people, you've asked forgiveness and they still refuse, so then it's no longer on you. The Rama adds in, but you need to go and declare in front of 10 people that you've asked for forgiveness. The Imur Rabo adds the Shulchan Aruch. If the person that you had slighted is your Rav, that is that's based on the Gemara. There, the Rabbi is allowed to say no as many times as he wants, and the person has to go and keep going back and keep asking for forgiveness. Adds the Rama. If you are now not the person who's being asked for forgiveness, you should not be cruel and you should not refuse that. Sometimes, it's the Rabbi or it's a parent or whatever, there's an educational purpose. The person comes and asks for forgiveness, you don't really mean it. You're not really sincere. I want you to think about what you've done, and I want you to improve and to grow, and therefore the person will say no. So in such a case, one can reject it. But otherwise, one should do one's utmost to forgive the person. If you had spoken about that person, not motzi shemra, meaning you had spoken about them slander, which is not true, then a person is not required to forgive. Okay. So says just read one piece in the Mishnah Berurah. He says like this: that's where you've just offended the person or insulted them with words. Right? This is not a mitzvah tasei zman grama. Throughout the year, if you have offended someone or you've hurt someone, you need to ask for their forgiveness. Nonetheless, you don't have time. Then you wait for another day. When it comes to Erev Yom Kippur, one has to correct everything that one can. It goes on to say, this is not just about asking forgiveness, but if there's anything, monetary matters, if I owe anybody money, not just that I've stolen, right? Nobody here is a thief. But if somebody, you owe somebody money, or there's a debt that you're late on paying or something like that, so there is an inyan before Yom Kippur, so as not to be considered, not to be considered having any money that's not yours, not to be considered a gazlan in even the slightest sense, to try and correct all those matters, to try and pay back the money. We want to try and give back everything that we can to be as perfect as we can and as clean as possible coming into this day. Rabbi Chananya ben Akasha